no matter how adamant I am on this subject, I always keep getting asked, does a cold air intake really matter for a modern day BMW? And I feel like I've beaten this subject so many times before, but it seems like it's always a common issue. And so, with that, let's go over a couple of real cold air intakes versus the hot air intakes that I am so adamantly against. And in all honesty, I would say that, for those of you who are short on time, most of it is a waste of money. You can get by with a high flow filter. And then as you'll see towards the end, there's actually a couple of other modifications and some that I would say that are worthy of being called a cold air intake when you actually modify it. And so these two are great examples of what I mean of a hot air intake. We have an open system inside the engine bay that is pulling air, yes, from the duct that's behind the grill, but however, there is an open section on the top, and on the one with the red filter, we also have some other areas that it's scavenging air from. And so it's not a completely sealed system, and therefore it looks good, you get more sound, but it's not really adding any more performance. Maybe in the beginning, when the car is still cold, it's arguable, right? So maybe when these companies put these cars on the dyno, maybe the car is cold when it first gets on the dyno, and then they're blasting a lot of cold air directly into the system in order for it to boost those numbers. The other thing too is that technically the air is more readily available because the filter is bigger. And what I mean by that is I actually have a picture up here. It's not necessarily a filter per se, but it will kind of highlight the general idea that these filters, they flow air a lot better than our stock paper filters. So we're trading off some of the filtering capabilities for the increased airflow. And if we take a look right here, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And so this isn't a filter. This is actually for like photography and videography for filtering light, but this will work into our same example. Say, for example, our air filter is this bottom one in the left corner over here. There's, there's a lot of small holes, right? So it's better at capturing the debris particles and it will still let air in. However, when we run something like a quote unquote cold air intake, it's really the filter that we get the noticeable effect, not necessarily that the air is colder, but it's able to pull the air into the system faster because it's like this one up here where the holes are bigger. So it's not filtering as much, but it's letting in more air. Therefore, more air is able to be part of the combustion process. There is more air in a timely fashion when you want to go faster. And so this is pretty much what they're playing off of. If you were to take that same cold air intake and put an equivalent filter that was in our car from stock, you would see that the benefits wouldn't be as much. It's not necessarily the actual intake itself that you see here that's doing the work. It's really the filter. So if you replace the filter, then it would be beneficial. I mean, you could always go with something like this, right? Where it's an enclosed system and you're essentially pulling air from the same place. This is the N55. We also have examples of the N20. And this is nice, but you're paying all that money, honestly, for aesthetics. You're not going to really be able to hear it as well as these two here that we went over first, because it's an enclosed system and you're paying all that money for the aesthetics of it, but the performance is going to be very similar to stock because you're keeping the enclosed system, and all that you're really doing in these is you're upgrading the filter. The one caveat when it comes to the N20 and N26 engine is, I think it's MST, the MST N20 intake, not their first generation, but their second generation. It reroutes the piping. So if you see that, it kind of like, it has that whole scooping motion where it starts down from kind of where the grill scoop is, or the entry point from the grill, and it kind of scoops its way in. Comparing that to, let's see here, a shorter one. So it's kind of like a short ram intake, essentially. Let's see if we can find it. And I don't think anybody's done videos on it yet, because I was just doing research on it not too long ago, and not too many people have it. I've only seen pictures. So if anybody has this, maybe you can speak to it. So imagine this one right here. This, I think this is Eventuri. This is their carbon fiber intake. And honestly, the good thing about Eventuri is if you do something like a retrofit, like a carbon fiber strut brace, their V2, their version 2 is designed to fit with that brace. So the good thing with going up to a more high quality brand is, yes, you get better carbon fiber parts. Maybe you get a better warranty. The fit and finish is better. And it's easier to fit with other modifications like a strut brace. And so this is what I was talking about. This is the MST intake, and it also gives you a different turbo inlet pipe, if I'm not mistaken. And so rather than having that big old scooping motion that we had here, it's pretty much just directly from, oh, it won't let me. It's pretty much directly from the scoop. Oh no, it's not even from the scoop. Well, technically it is. So if you see like behind the headlight, that's kind of where the scoop is. The scoop kind of goes underneath the headlight. And so the air is being routed directly into that corner where the filter is, or where the filter housing is, and then it's sucking directly down into the turbo. So technically, I mean, if we're being nitpicky, yes, it's not a cold air intake. However, the air isn't circulating in the tubing for as long. So potentially you could make the argument that changing the design is also beneficial. This is really like a short ram intake. So it's basically, you're giving the air no time to increase its temperature through the tubing, or reduce the amount of time in the tubing. So when it goes through the turbo, it doesn't spike as high as if it were to be in the intake system as long, if that makes sense. It also does clean up the engine bay a little bit too. So, you know, if you need to do like a coolant flush or anything, you don't have to necessarily take out the intake. Oil filter housing gasket right there, and the oil cooler, you don't have to remove the intake. So it cleans things up. So that's another benefit to it, is if you're somebody who wrenches on your car a lot, this is beneficial from the standpoint of your temperatures to the turbo probably aren't going to be as high. It's a quasi closed system. And whenever you need to work on anything in here, like your belts or anything, you don't have to waste time in taking out your intake. So you could make the case here. You know, if you find this on sale, it's you know, $566. If you feel that that's worth it to you, the time that you would save, as well as the performance trade-offs, then that's something to consider. And like I said, if you're somebody who works on your car a lot, this is something that I would say you can make the argument. You know, I get nothing from this. You know, I don't even know what website this is. But, you know, if you find it on sale, I mean, you know, the holidays are coming up, so maybe it'll be on sale soon. But with the exception to that, most of these things, they're replicating the OEM system because it's already very good. It's not until we get into increasing the duct system from behind the grill, that things get better. And this is where I'm going to bring up a company here. Let's see here if I have their website up. It's velocitech.com, and they do have things for specific BMW fitments, because like from the N20, N55, and B58, things are all a little different. And so, they have their duct system here. They make it for other models other than BMW as well. But essentially what this does is these brackets will attach to the scoop on the V-brace. So it's actually a lot easier than the AFE scoop that I installed a while back. And you can see that this sticks out a whole lot more. So the protrusion comes pretty much right on the grill, versus the AFE, it's kind of tucked behind a little bit and a little bit more inconspicuous. But this is going to gather more air because it's right there. So it doesn't have time to deflect once this portion of the air comes into the grill. And so I would say, if you're going to spend money on a cold air intake, we just looked at one that was like $500, and let's see, let's make things fair and keep going down the, oh no, this is designed for a B58. So let's go B58 cold air intake. All right. And so we see here that we have anything from 250 to 420, 300, 600, all pretty up there, right? And all having the same issue. If we look at all these designs, right? Like, it's an open system. That's an open system. Kind of closed. It's better. However, there's no gasket sealing to really enclose it like we do with the OEM system. Open. I think this is just an enhanced OEM version. All of these things are going to give you minimal boost in performance. What you could do instead, even let's just say we take this 250, 260 here, right? Comparing that to the Velocitech, it's 119. And then if we go on Amazon, let's see here. And let's see here. B58 high flow filter. Okay, I don't know what that shower stuff is. 340i. $70. $40. AFE is on the high end at $80. So let's just take the 80, for example, here, because this is the high one. 80, you pair that with the 120, you say 220. After tax and everything, depending on where you are, we are still well below the 260, right? And like I said, most of the performance is coming from the filter. So we're getting a filter that's going to allow more air in an enclosed system that's already very good from BMW, from OEM. And then we just get a scoop on top of that to increase the air. And let's just say you just serviced your car and you don't want to buy a new filter right now. This scoop will work fine just all on its own. And they do have different colors here as well. So this is just the red, and this is good for visual purposes too, so that we can actually see it, right? You don't have to get the red. It's just, I think this is like one of the best colors if you're going to demo anything. So it highlights it very well. And it can be stylish, and I will say that they do make it for other cars. And I would say there's a little bit of inspiration from a non-BMW brand. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, the Challengers, if I'm not mistaken, they they borrow the Angel Eyes from BMW. BMW kind of moved away from that, but I mean, it's if you like this type of thing, then yeah, it's nice. Also, too, is when you go to shows, you want your car to stand out. You want to have some sort of personal identity to it. You want to have some styling with it. So it's up to you. You could always get it in black too, right? If you just want the performance benefits, you don't want to draw a lot of attention because, some of us here in California have more restrictions than others, right? Then you could go with black and you get all the performance benefits of it and you're spending significantly less money. Let's just say you don't catch it on sale, taxes go up or whatever. You're probably spending $240. It's still less than the most budget option that we could find here. Let's take a look at this one and see. Okay, so it's a very open system. Oh no, it's partially enclosed. So, kudos to them. It is closed, but that is open. That right there is open. So you're going to be sucking in hot air to a certain degree because this is pulling in air from 360 degrees and then also here as well. Versus if this was completely enclosed like the OEM system, then you're only being able to pull in air from the duct, which is feeding in from down here. And that's the only way that air can come in because you're in a closed system. There's weatherproofing in our air boxes as it is. Now there is that small little baffle there, and you could just build a little block off plate for that or seal it off. And honestly, yes, it does reduce like the airflow and things like that because it's an extra port for the air to travel, but you could just build a block off plate and seal it off. Again, saving money, getting all the benefits, and you can go to something more. Again, most of the benefits of a cold air intake are not beneficial in a turbocharged engine because most of the air gets cooled by the intercooler, which is down here. So if you want more power, you have to invest in an intercooler because this is where most of the air gets cooled because when it comes out of the turbo, it's hot. So we're only really nitpicking here on a few degrees, right? The hot air intakes that I reference, let's just say they're pulling in air and, they're pulling it in, on average because it's still getting cooled. Let's just say 10 to 20 degrees hotter than what you would normally get, right? I'm being generous here. It's more, but if I'm to give, the benefit of the doubt and typically every advantage to the cold air intake, let's just say 10 to 20 degrees, right? So you're 10 to 20 degrees hotter going into the turbo, and then you're 10 to 20 degrees hotter out of the turbo to the intercooler, right? So you're reducing the intercooler's efficiency by 20 degrees versus if we can keep it enclosed, reduce the track of airflow so it doesn't have to be in the tubing as long, and give it a high flow filter so that the air can pass through better. And then you also upgrade the intercooler. That's where all the benefits are. That's what makes this special. It's not just the intake that does, or it's not just the scoop that does something. It's not just the filter that also does something, and both of which are measurable on a dyno. However, it's not until you couple this with the intercooler because it all gets heated by the turbo. When you have a naturally aspirated engine and you're pulling in, say, air from up here, which is stock, versus down here near the bottom of the bumper, yes, that does make a difference because you're pulling in denser air from the lower, from a lower point because colder air is denser. So that's why typically naturally aspirated cars, their cold air intakes are very low. And then you have to have the water guard to protect it in case of rain and flooding. That's where you can say, okay, I have a longer tube in order to grab colder air and it's positioned lower. Yes, that is beneficial in a naturally aspirated engine because it goes directly to the engine. There's nothing to heat up the air after it gets through the tubing other than, the temperature inside the engine. And as I said before, here are some of the dyno results that Velocitec has experienced. So this is how much air is coming in. So red is red is OEM, and then blue is with it. And this is for the 340i specifically, right? And so the good thing here is that what we can infer that these numbers are going to be very similar, because the N55, it's the same thing, just the filter's on the opposite side. The N20 filter's on the same side. So ambient air temp, or sorry, the amount of air is going to be the same. And then, so remember, blue line is with the scoop. Blue is again with the scoop, but this is now measuring temperature of the air. So we're dropping, let's see here. This is about, let's see here, from here to here. Let's just say it's about half, right? I'm not, so 190 to 200. So we're about 5 degrees difference down here. But on the low end where you're really getting the torque, right? Let's see, when you're at the first part, when you're pulling in the air, you can see as much as, this is going to be hard for me. So, okay, so this is degrees of 10. So 10, 20, almost 20 degrees. Oh, hey, I didn't even realize that I did that. So, I mean, I prepared the slides and everything in advance, but I didn't actually really look at the numbers. So, I was kind of close, 20 degrees. So, I guess 20 degrees is close, right? As far as, you know, what the difference in air temp is. I'm actually curious if Velocitech would, you know, obviously they would have to see that it's worth it for them, because they're going to have to be the ones to invest in it. But I'm curious if they took an intake like what we had over here, you know, they could do it like this where it's open, and then they could also do it like this where it's closed. And I'm really curious to see where that lines up here. Because of the design of the filter, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm pretty sure that the temps would be higher than this. However, I'm almost certain that the amount of air that it pulls in could be more. Now, I'm not really sure how this works, if it's just like, because here's the hard part about this is you can pull in more air, and this is where we get a little nerdy here, so bear with me. You can pull in more air itself, but you're not pulling in as much O2 particles, which is required for the combustion process. So although you're pulling in more air, I would like to see these two charts graphed against like horsepower and torque. Because then that will let me know does it really matter that you pull in more air? Or does it really matter that is it okay if you pull in a little less air, but it's colder, and that will yield better power and better torque? So those are things to really factor in. It's not just the graphs of, okay, it pulls in more air, it's colder, but then is it usable on the flip side, right? Because to a certain extent, you're going to be capped at your intercooler's capacity. So for example, let's say if the hot air intake, I'll call it, the numbers line up as we would expect. The air is more and the temperature is higher. There's a chance that if they're running the OEM intercooler, that the torque and horsepower numbers would be very similar, because the limiting factor is no longer the intake system, but the intercooler, right? So now it depends on, do you have these intake systems in with an upgraded intercooler? And then what happens? So only then would it really make sense. So I'm curious to know if these numbers are with an aftermarket. If we did this with horsepower and torque, what effect would these things have with an OEM intercooler versus an aftermarket one? And so, you know, this is very similar. The other good thing too about these drop-in filters is that they're reusable. So air flows from the bottom up. And so all that you have to do is take like a garden hose. You don't use a pressure washer with these, right? They're still they're not necessarily paper, but they're cotton, right? So using a pressure washer could collapse the holes. If you just use like regular free flowing garden hose water, it's fine. You would just pour water in the reverse direction from top to bottom. Versus the paper filters, they're paper, so they're not reusable, and you just throw them away. After you get through about 2 or 3 of these filters pay for themselves. And to keep costs down, I do recommend that you go with the dry version versus the oiled one. One, because you don't need to oil it. 2, you don't need the solution to clean it. And technically, yes, the oiled one does filter better because it can trap the debris in the oil. However, you're reducing the effectiveness of the airflow. And potentially, if you don't clean it, if you're not meticulous with it, depending on your driving conditions, the oil could gunk up. And even if you do clean it, the oil with the dirt could gunk up the filter. Versus the dirt, you know, if you really want to, you could use like a detergent, use the recommended one from the manufacturer, and then make your little solution and then just kind of pour it through and you're good to go. Or you put it in a spray bottle, spray it, let it sit for a little bit, and then use a garden hose too. And I would say, like, don't even use a garden hose attachment. Just let the garden hose water flow through this and you're good to go. And so this brings us to the AFE versus the Velocitech. I'm going to put it to you guys like this. The AFE, depending on where you buy it from, they won't ship it to you because AFE is intended for road use. So depending on your locale, they won't ship it because it's not CARB certified. It's not necessarily that it interferes with emissions. It's just that they don't want to pay for the certificate to get it CARB certified. And that's not a shot against AFE. And you can see too that this filter is much smaller as well. Let's see. Let's see if we can get a picture of this. While the Velocitech, it's not intended for road use, right? So if you were to put it on and take cool Instagram pictures or whatever, or make a video for demonstration purposes, do with that information as you will. So because Velocitech scoops are not intended for road use, they'll ship everywhere. They're meant for off-road use and, you know, display purposes if you go to shows or whatever. While the AFE, you can't always get it. So, you know, there's little hacks around the AFE. If you really want it, if you're married to the brand, you go on eBay and you find someone who's willing to give it to you for off-road purposes. Right? So, oh, here we go. So this may be a good side-by-side here. Let me see if I can pull up the Velocitech one. Let's actually just go back because it'll be easier for me to... Okay, so here's the Velocitech scoops. You can see that if I wish I had a side profile here. That's close enough. It's pretty much right up on it, right? And then when we look at the AFE, it's hidden behind, right? So it's not right up against the grill. So there is going to be a chance for there to be some air deflection there as well. The double scoop thing, it's just more of a symmetry thing. Unless you're running an M car, you don't need both. You can just get one. But if the look really bothers you, you get both. Just know that the second one isn't going to be functional. The only caveat to that is, let's see if we can pull it up. The only caveat is, say with the N20, N26 engine, and even the B58, on the passenger side where the scoop is, you will have your air intake. If I'm not mistaken, on the B58, you also have your coolant expansion tank over here. So you have cooling components over here. You can have the scoop here. You can take off the block-off plate from the radiator duct and have airflow through here. The only thing that I would say is I would do this, but monitor your hood. If you have something like a GTS hood, or if you have the fender flares with the cutouts, it's fine because you have an escape passage for the air. But if you're just building up air in here, the air is going to push up against your hood. So it's going to be extra pressure on your hood if you don't have an escape port for those gases. Because remember, the under panel is down here too. So I'm not saying that it's a perfectly closed system, but the rate of air coming in will exceed the rate of air that's leaving the engine bay, if that makes sense. So I would say open it up, because on the N55s, oh, it's not there. Oh, you can't see it really here. On the N55s, if you guys look at the top picture here, actually, let me just look at N55 engine bay. The thing about it that I see beneficial with the N55 on opening it up, let's see if we have a good picture here. I think that's as close as that we're going to get. Let's see if we can blow this up. Okay. Right down here, so you can see that you see this little U-shaped line right here. So this is, oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the name of it right now. But basically, this is part of your oil cooling system. This will, so the oil line from down here, it goes down to your oil cooler, up into this part. Oh my goodness, the part is escaping me right now. Does somebody in the chat, does somebody in the chat remember what the name of this is? It looks almost like your brake booster. I'm forgetting the name of it right now. But essentially, this is part of your oil cooling system, right? And so my theory is, if we open up the duct system here, it will lead to here. This will help reduce your oil temperatures, because we know that the N55s run hot, right? It doesn't run exactly at operating temp, and if we were to reduce the running temps, it would still be well within the optimal running temperatures, if you guys get what I'm saying. So having a little bit of airflow here to reduce temperatures for your oil will be beneficial. And so my theory has always been, if we can get to optimal running temperature at the same rate, but we reduce the running temperature overall once we're there because it exceeds so much, that should, in theory, reduce the wear and tear on the gaskets. That should extend their longevity. And if we have ports like a GTS hood, fender vents, in order to let the air out, it will help the degradation of the rubber gaskets, the plastic components in the engine bay or whatever. It'll just extend the life overall of the engine bay. Long-term wise, we'll have to see how it goes. But to me, that kind of makes sense from a functional standpoint. I don't know what you guys think. Now, I do have something here that you guys will probably be like one of the first people to see this outside of the Velocitech team. So for full transparency, I am partnering up with them. I haven't received the unit yet, so I don't really know. But this is kind of, I'm walking you guys through, like, when I look for parts or whatever, I really look for, does it have a performance benefit? Is it cost effective for me to do this? Or are there other options for me to get that same benefit at a lower price point? So this is kind of how I analyze things and if I should get it for my car. But if you guys want to check these out for yourselves, I have a discount code in the description, as well as like links to the filters for your respective cars. So they do have this. And when I said it's meant for track use, this next part really is meant for like off-road use or track use, and that is they have a much bigger it's like a ram air intake, right? So the filter and everything is still hooked up to the duct behind the grill, but if you wanted to let more air in for, let's say, better cooling, if you were to somehow rig up a duct that could connect from the headlight housing into the intake, that might be an option for you guys on the track. I would say like on the GTS hood, it's good. On, I'm not sure what design this is called, but this is good. You're letting in a whole lot more air, so you need to let the air out. You know, the gap between the gasket back here might not be enough. So having hood vents is very beneficial if you plan to run this. I wouldn't really recommend running this system if you don't have a hood vent, if you don't have fender vents, because you're letting in so much air at such a high rate of speed. It could damage your hood, or at least put stress on your hood latches. But based off of the weight of the hood, it might not. So for those of you who really know about this, you know, let me know. But yeah, this is something that can work on its own, and it can work together. Obviously, it's going to be more beneficial if you pair them together. However, just know that you'll have to replace your headlight, so visibility will be a thing, or reduced visibility will be an issue. But if you're doing this just for the track, it shouldn't be an issue. So, you know, you can get the whole thing where it lights up and everything. They include all the hardware for all that, or you could just run it just for the benefits of letting in more air. Completely up to you. If I'm not mistaken, they are releasing some of this stuff right now. Let me see here. I think they have like a few prototypes that are available. Let me see here. I believe I do have a link. Awesome. Okay. So I do have a link here, and I'm going to share with you guys in the chat. This one, I don't think I have a discount code for, just because it's like a prototype, so it's already at a reduced price. Like I said, for me as a daily, I wouldn't run it. But if I were to have a dedicated track car, I would run this, right? You need better cooling because your car is running so much at a much higher temperature. And so, you know, actually, the thing that I don't know, I know that my channel is mostly catered to like DIYs and how-to videos, some reviews on parts. I actually have no idea how many of you guys actually track your cars. So if you guys like end up using this system, have used a similar system, let me know. And so let's see here. With that, let's open it up for Q&A. I've been talking for a while now. Oh my goodness, why is this so big? It's probably because I just did that update. DBFIU, Velocitech for the win. They always innovate, love their stuff. All right, well, good. We have somebody who's already a happy customer, so that makes me more confident when the part comes in that it's actually going to do well, because it already has someone who's a fan. Thanks for sharing your input. Greg. Hey, Fritz, I figured out the seating issue. Seat was too low and back angle was too narrow. I also noticed my seat is askew, pointing to the gas pedal. This was causing me to hang left thigh on the side. Oh, okay. So it's actually the opposite of what we thought, actually. So I hope... Oh, here we go. You're asking it right here. How do I adjust the seat angle? So just loosen the bolts. I think they're like T45s or T50s. So loosen the 4 bolts, and there's a little play in the seat. So basically the seat can kind of shim to the left. And so you just like loosen the bolts, put it in an angle that you want, and then tighten them back down. It's actually noticeable too. Like if you notice like your armrest creaks a lot, even like if you're not leaning on it, that's because your seat is pushing up against it. So there's that much play where it could be pushing up against the armrest panel. And then if you loosen the bolts, you could take it away from there and it will get rid of the noise. Jack VD Brug. Disagree. It's hot air. Still short tube length is negligible. Okay. Right on. Only makes it louder. Okay. I mean, if you've tried it, like I said, I haven't tried it. In theory, it kind of works. It makes a little sense, right? If they found a way to have, I'm curious if there was a way to take the B58 intake, the regular B58 intake, and put it on an N20. Would that would actually make things a whole lot better. Nose itchy enough? Yeah, I don't know what it is. Sometimes like when I do when I talk, it does do that. Other times it doesn't. So I don't know actually. Only makes it louder. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. Let's see. Let's look it up. I mean, that's all the questions that we have for right now. So if no one has anything else, let us just see here. B58. For B58, yeah, none of this stuff. Oh, this is similar. So I guess we would just have to see if the positioning is similar enough, then maybe. Oh no, that's completely different. Yeah, if there was a way to have the B58 intake on an N20, that would be more beneficial. It would shorten everything up, if I'm not mistaken, and that could work. Let's see what this is for. Oh, this kind of gets rid of the baffle. So see, this is what I was saying is, just imagine that this is, how do I get out of this? I don't want to subscribe to anything. So this kind of just makes it shorter. It gets rid of the baffle there that you see. So this is interesting because the N20 and N26 comes in from the same area. However, yeah, we would have to see. It's something for us to look into. I don't know about the turbo inlet pipe, how that would make a big difference, but something for us to definitely consider here. So yeah, time will tell. If I find something on this, I'll definitely let you guys know. But this is kind of my gripe with it, right? It's always going to be scoop and filter is going to be better and cheaper than a cold air intake. You could even make the argument that if you pay the extra money for the other duct on the other side, it's a little bit more, that it's still cheaper than most of the cold air intakes out there. So it's really up to you. How do you want to spend your money? Is that intake sound, is that induction noise really all that important to you, or is performance more important to you? US Vigim. Hey Fritz, how's your clutch holding up? I have a 2016 and we are close on mileage. No real issues with mine. Just shifter seems rough sometimes. Clutch is fine. Honestly, I've had no issues with it. Once I did the clutch delay valve, it handles like a dream now. No issues on like the low speed inclines, like driveways, or declines. So it handles well. Yeah, I guess if you got it early enough, like if the previous owner didn't kind of burn the clutch, then you should be fine. I think my dad's is like the F30 is like at 100 and we got it at 114 and it's probably like at 118 now. And that clutch was pretty warm when we got it and we still haven't changed it yet. And it's still fine. Like it doesn't slip. You can notice like it's not the best thing in the world, but it's holding up for now. 2 yen, hello. Mike, love your channel, Fritz. Love your content and just wanted to say hello. Well, hi back. Welcome to the live stream and thanks for checking out the videos. I'm glad that they're helpful for you. US Vigim, did the delay valve and the clutch pedals and the clutch, oh, you did the delay valve and the clutch pedal stop. Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of people do the clutch pedal stop. I know that it's faster. It'll make everything just more seamless. However, you know, living in the Bay Area, you never know what's going to happen to your car. So I figured if people already have a hard time driving clutch, I don't want to make it any easier for unwanted people trying to drive my car to drive it. Not exactly related, but doing the rear differential fluid this weekend. Okay, that if you find a way that makes it easier than what's typically found on YouTube videos of like just siphoning it through or just pulling it out through the pump and then filling it back up until it kind of leaks out. If you find a cleaner way of doing it, please share. All right, so it looks like that. Oh no. 3D Ken, is any way to check oil temp on M235i X Drive? No, there's not. The best that you could do is hook it up to something like a P3 gauge, or I have like a P3 gauge knockoff that, let me see here. The best that you could do is get something that measures coolant water temperature and go off of that. So this is what I have. It's much cheaper than P3. It's not as seamless. You have to use a little bit of double-sided tape, but if you can get past the aesthetics of it and get it to a place that you want, that's the best way to do it. There you go. Yeah, if you want something that's like perfect fit and finish, looks clean, and you have all the extra bells and whistles to like measure many more things. I think the gauge that I have can only measure like 4 or 5 things. If you want something basic, the one that I send is perfectly fine. Otherwise, you go with the P3 gauge because it has all the extra bells and whistles. Like the P3 gauge could even read codes, if I'm not mistaken. I hope that helps. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I hope that was helpful. As soon as I get the scoop on, I'll report some numbers. I typically don't dyno the car. The reason why is, for me, at least the way I see it, dynoing the car, unless you're doing something like really scientific, which, you know, YouTube is not. To me, you're spending money to have to like kind of put wear and tear in your car. Like it's cool if you really want the numbers, but for me, it's, you know, I have the P3 gauge knockoff that I have there. It measures air temp, and I'll probably just go off of that. I'll go off of like what's noticeable, because although you might have number increases or decreases, do you really notice it? is it noticeable at the end of the day? And you could say like, oh yeah, it does all these things, but did you notice it? Was it worth the money? Was it worth the investment? And so that's kind of the approach that I'll take. But if there's anything specific that you guys would like to see when it comes time to test the scoops, please let me know. Otherwise, you guys can always send me DMs, other questions, other video topics at VroomTuber, at TikTok, as well as on Instagram. I hope all of you guys have a great rest of your day as well as the rest of your week, and I'll see you next Tuesday.